April 29th. For most, it's just another spring Tuesday. But for the most famous family in Northwest Arkansas, it is a date etched in blood-red ink. It is the day the gavel finally drops on a chapter the Duggars prayed would remain buried in the Ozark Hills. Summary. But as we count down the final hours to this landmark court date regarding the child welfare charges, a chilling question haunts the community. If the system failed once, can it truly deliver justice now? Stay with us, because what happens in that courtroom on the 29th will change the Duggar legacy forever. Welcome to the final countdown. This is a story of hidden records, systemic silence, and the innocent faces caught in the crossfire. This is Judgment Day. To understand the urgency of this upcoming court date, we have to look at the legal framework currently gripping Arkansas. Legal analysts and local insiders have pointed to a massive shift in how the state handles high-profile welfare allegations. Legal expert Mark Walters once noted, "When a family's brand is built on the sanctity of the home, any breach of child welfare isn't just a legal matter, it's an existential crisis." For years, the little Duggars, the younger generation, have lived in the shadow of their older siblings' scandals. But this time, the child welfare charges suggest a breakdown of the safety net within the Tontitown compound itself. Later in this documentary, we will examine the specific motions filed by the defense to keep the cameras out of the courtroom. What are they so afraid of the public seeing? We must look back to move forward. The Duggar family has always operated on a policy of internal discipline. We remember the 2015 leaks that first pulled the curtain back on the 2002 incidents. But the current charges on the April 29th docket aren't about the past. They are about the now. On Reddit's Duggars Snark, one user summarized the collective anxiety perfectly. "We've seen them pray away the police before. On April 29th, we'll see if prayer works against a state-appointed prosecutor." This isn't just about one family, it's about the precedent it sets for Arkansas law. If the child welfare charges stick, it could trigger a domino effect involving mandatory reporting and state-monitored living conditions. Who is looking out for the little Duggars? As the court date nears, the emotional toll on the minors involved is unfathomable. While the parents prepare for a legal battle, the children are the ones whose futures hang in the balance. Wait until you hear the leaked statement from a former family associate regarding the mood inside the big house this week. It contradicts everything Jim Bob has said publicly. The docudrama of the Duggars has always been one of purity and protection. But legal filings suggest a different reality, one where the walls of the compound may have been too high for help to get over. Let's look at the Judgment Day logistics. April 29th isn't just a hearing. It's the culmination of months of investigative work by state agencies. Sources indicate that the prosecution has prepared a mountain of digital evidence. Under Arkansas Code Section December 18, 101, the safety of the child is paramount. The state's burden of proof in these welfare cases is specific. They must prove that the environment posed a substantial risk. But what if the star witness is someone from within the inner circle? Rumors of a rebel sibling cooperating with the state are reaching a fever pitch. The digital world is divided. On YouTube, the Duggar defenders claim this is a witch hunt against a religious family. Meanwhile, on Facebook, a growing movement of former IBLP members is demanding accountability. It's about time. One YouTube commenter wrote under a recent news clip, "They've spent decades telling us how to raise our kids while their own home was a fortress of secrets." This cultural divide is exactly why the April 29th date has such, save the date, energy. It is the moment where the court of public opinion meets the court of law. What happens on April 30th? If the Duggars win, they will claim total vindication. But if the child welfare charges lead to a conviction or a mandatory intervention, the Duggar empire is effectively dismantled. This isn't just about a court date. It's about the end of an era. The Netflix-style ending to this saga isn't a happy one. It's a cautionary tale about power, religion, and the vulnerability of children. We are looking at a potential shift in how reality TV families are monitored. The little Duggars will grow up in a world where their family's secrets were processed through a public courtroom. The countdown is almost over. On April 29th, the clock stops. The silence ends. And the truth, no matter how painful, will be entered into the record. Let's deep dive in full details. April 29th is circled. Not just on a calendar, but in conversations, in comment sections, in quiet speculation spreading across the internet. A date that feels heavy. A date that feels final. But in reality, it may be something very different. Because when people hear phrases like child welfare charges and court date, the mind moves quickly toward conclusions, toward outcomes, toward the idea of a single day that changes everything. But the truth about April 29th is more complex, less cinematic, and far more procedural. Before we go any further, we need to clarify something essential. As of now, there are no publicly verified court records confirming specific child welfare charges tied to the Duggar family set for April 29th in Arkansas. What exists instead is a growing wave of online discussion, posts referencing a date, suggestions of a hearing, and increasing urgency in how the story is being told. That urgency is powerful, because a date, even an unconfirmed one, creates anticipation. It gives a story structure, a countdown, a sense that something definitive is about to happen. But in the legal system, dates rarely mean conclusions. They mean steps. So let's step back and understand what a date like April 29th typically represents. In child welfare cases, especially those involving family courts, hearings are often part of an ongoing process. Not a final judgment, but a checkpoint. These hearings can include status reviews, preliminary findings, custody evaluations, or procedural updates. Sometimes they last minutes, sometimes hours, but rarely do they resolve everything at once. The goal of child welfare proceedings is not punishment. It's protection. The court's responsibility is to assess the well-being of children, to determine safety, stability, and, when possible, preservation of the family unit. That framework is rooted in long-standing legal principles. In cases like Santosky vs. Kramer in 1982, the United States Supreme Court emphasized that parental rights are fundamental, but not absolute. The state can intervene, but must meet a high standard of proof. That balance, between protecting children and preserving families, is where these cases live. And it's rarely simple. So when viewers hear April 29th described as Judgment Day, it creates a misleading expectation. Because real courtrooms do not operate like final episodes. There is no dramatic reveal. No instant resolution. Just a process. Often slow. Often emotionally complex. And at the center of that process are the children. The ones some online communities have started calling the little Duggars. A phrase that reflects both familiarity and distance. Because while audiences feel like they know these children, they don't truly see their daily lives. And that's important. Because in any child welfare situation, privacy becomes critical. Courts often seal records, limit public access, restrict what can be shared. Not to hide wrongdoing, but to protect minors from public exposure. Which means, even if proceedings are happening, much of the detail may never be fully public. And that silence creates space. Space for speculation, for assumptions, for narratives that may or may not reflect reality. Online, that space is already filled. On Reddit, threads are counting down. April 29th is going to be huge. This is when everything comes out. Others push back. People are acting like it's a final verdict. That's not how this works. Family court is a process, not a single event. On Facebook, the tone shifts again. Concern is more visible, praying for the children involved. Whatever is happening, I hope they are safe. And on YouTube, the energy is heightened. Mark your calendars. This is the day we've been waiting for. Everything changes on April 29th. But does it? History suggests otherwise. If we look at past high-profile family court cases, very few hinge on a single date. Instead, they unfold over months, sometimes years, with multiple hearings, multiple rulings, and ongoing evaluations. Even in cases involving public figures, the pattern is the same. Initial hearings, follow-up reviews, adjustments based on new information. A process that evolves, rather than concludes. So April 29th, if it is indeed a real court date, is likely a moment within that process. Not the end of it. But emotionally, it still feels significant. Because dates give people something to hold onto. A point in time. A sense of movement. A feeling that answers are coming. And when children are involved, that feeling intensifies. Because the stakes feel higher. More personal. More urgent. For longtime viewers of the Duggar series, this adds another layer. Because they have watched these children grow. Seen birthdays, milestones, moments framed as wholesome, predictable, safe. And now, those same children are being discussed in the context of legal proceedings. That shift is difficult, even for viewers who have never met them. It creates a kind of emotional dissonance between what was seen and what is now being suggested. And that dissonance fuels engagement. People want clarity. They want answers. They want to understand what is happening and what it means. But the legal system does not move at the speed of public curiosity. It moves deliberately, carefully, and often quietly. So what should viewers realistically expect as April 29th approaches? Possibility 1. A routine hearing. Minimal public information. No dramatic announcements. Possibility 2. A procedural update. New dates set. Next steps outlined. But no final decisions. Possibility 3. Limited disclosures. Small pieces of verified information emerging. Enough to shift the conversation, but not conclude it. What is unlikely? is a single moment that resolves everything. And that's where expectation management becomes important. Because when people expect a climax, and instead receive a process, it can feel unsatisfying. But that doesn't make it insignificant. In fact, these smaller steps are often where the most important decisions begin. Quietly, without headlines. Looking ahead, the long-term implications depend on what, if anything, is confirmed. If formal proceedings are verified, this could mark a significant shift in how the Duggar family is publicly understood, especially regarding parenting, privacy, and accountability. If the claims remain unverified, this moment may instead become a case study in how quickly narratives can form around a single date. Either way, April 29th has already taken on meaning. Not because of what we know, but because of what people expect. And that expectation is shaping the story in real time. So as the date approaches, the most important thing may not be what happens in the courtroom, but how the story is told outside of it. Because in today's world, the countdown is not just to an event. It's to a moment of interpretation. And when that moment arrives, the difference between fact and assumption will matter more than ever. Until then, the circle remains on the calendar. The conversation continues, and the outcome remains unwritten. Will you be watching when the gavel falls? We will be covering the results of the April 29th hearing the moment they are released. Make sure you have notifications turned on so you don't miss our emergency update. Because on Judgment Day, there is nowhere left to hide.